It is Tuesday, October 15th, 2024. I'm John Dwanzik, and this is the regular meeting of the Avon Lake Board of Municipal Utilities. Tonight, I am joined by fellow board members. To my left, Mr. Abram and Mr. Rush, and to my right, Mr. Ricky and Mrs. Schnabel. Tonight's meeting is being live streamed on Facebook and on YouTube. If you are in that audience and you would like to make comments, there is a comment availability on each of those, and please enter any comments that you have. And Mr. Urinich, who's here tonight, Chief of Utility Operations, will be monitoring them for input during the public speaking part of the meeting. Tonight's meeting also with a full board here. Any motion that's made will take a minimum of 3 votes in support to pass. All votes will be taken by voice vote with the exception of an executive session motion, which will be done by roll call vote. There is an executive session planned for tonight, so you'll get to see that. Let's see, I did mention Mr. Monroe here as the Chief Utilities Executive. He's going to be handling a lot of the meeting points that come up. And also with us tonight is Attorney Carr from the Sealy Savage Law Firm. And in the audience, Chair recognizes Mr. Nicholas Mondello of the public. Let's see, did I miss anything on the first?
No.
Okay. So the first order of business tonight is the approval of minutes from the October 1st meeting. Are there any edits or comments on those minutes? Hearing none, then they are approved as submitted. The next matter is public speakers. Mr. Urinich, do we have any public speakers?
There are no comments, Mr.
Or
Chairman.
comments, thank you. Mr. Mondello, anything to add at this point? Thank you. Okay, moving on to correspondence. Mr. Monroe, do we have any?
I do not have any correspondence to pass along this evening. Our next agenda item after expenditures will address correspondence I received.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Monroe. Next item is expenditures. Would someone like to make that motion? Mr. Abram.
I move to approve Avon Lake Regional Water expenses from September 27 through October 10th, 2024.
Thank you, Mr. Abram. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Ricky. Discussion.
I have one question.
Mr. Abram.
On fund number 721, number 63, the purchase from Avon Lake Environmental Development Group. What are they going to be used for?
Yeah, they had some stray equipment at the old former power plant, and it's equipment that we can utilize. The auto samplers, those are brand new samplers that were in boxes that we use in our system. For instance, at an industrial location for pre-treatment, we may set up a sampler in a manhole to monitor the discharge coming out of that site. So it was a very good deal that we were able to get on those. And then there was also a floor scrubber buffing machine.
Do you have more equipment that we can look at?
No, not really. I think for the most part, everything has been disposed of.
Okay, that's all. That's
Yeah,
all I
a
have.
ton of stuff before the demolition, like in the very beginning, but like, if you can't take it right away,
Get rid of it.
so.
All right, thanks. That's all I have. Thank you.
Anyone else? I had a couple of items, all related, starting with items 49 and 50 in Fund 701, related to 39 and 40 in Fund 721. Let's just do those. First of all, I believe you have said, Mr. Monroe, that previously that these are going to be reimbursed. Our expenses on Verdantis, they'll be reimbursed by the seller, is that correct?
The majority of the expenses for Verdantis will be reimbursed by a grant. But these specific expenses here, these are not reimbursement expenses. What those represent is the air monitoring that was performed by Verdantis when ALERG imploded a couple months ago at the site. We split the costs with the city of Avon Lake.
Okay, well, that makes sense then. That's
Yes.
exactly what I was going to ask. I mean, it's well that we're paying something for it, but I would say it's a shared expense.
Yes,
Since we
and
both have an
obviously
interest
with
in
our
it.
vested interest in Lake Erie and the water source, we wanted to, in speaking with the mayor and the administration, we were all in agreement with splitting those costs.
Sure, that makes it a little easier on everyone.
So this is a quarter of the expenses for each fund.
Yes.
Okay,
yes. If
thank
you add
you.
the two funds, the four line items would equal half. of the
Gotcha,
Total
okay.
expenses.
Mhm.
Okay, similarly, when we get over to Fund 703, we are paying out of that fund for repairs to ETL 1, but that's a consortium fund, so we manage it, and it's actually, 20% of that is Avon Lakes.
Yeah, actually on that specific fund, ETL 1 and ETL 2, the Avon Lake share is very minimal because ETL 2, we do not take any water off of ETL 2, so we have no responsibility there as far as any contribution. ETL 1, we do supplement our system in the southeast quadrant of the city, so. We do especially during summer months, we have water usage from ETL 1. So we're billed just like the other consortium members, and that revenue goes into the fund and then pays expenses out of it. So when there is a break, we pay our fair share.
Okay, and let me ask you this mechanically, how does the other members of the consortium pay their share into the fund?
It's all metered based on their usage. When the agreements were set up, ETL 1 being the first agreement, it was stated capacities. So each entity, and at the time it was rural Lorraine County Water Authority and the city of Avon and North Ridgeville, and they said we need X million gallons a day of flow. And so that was their percentage of cost on the project. And so now the ongoing operation and maintenance, we have two different rates. So we have a rate for the usage of the water, which is 10% more than an Avon Lake customer. And then we also have in what we call the O&M rate, which is the operation and maintenance rate. And that's to pay for expenses, for instance, when there is a water break. We are the contract operator, so all of our employees, our equipment, everything is accounted for and is billed appropriately to that fund. So that O&M rate helps to pay for that, and that does get adjusted periodically to account for increases.
Okay. Similarly, Fund 749, Rural Lorraine, Rural Lorraine County Water Authority is being paid $32.06 for meter readings. How would you explain that?
So the 749 Lorco Fund, that expense that is being paid to Rural Lorraine County Water Authority represents Lorco customers are billed based on their water meter readings. So Rural Lorraine County Water Authority goes out and reads the meters, and they charge for those readings. So we don't have to do that. They're already doing it. So Lorco pays that expense out of the custodial fund that we manage to pay for those meter readings.
Okay. I think that's all I have. Thank you. Mrs. Schnabel.
I did have a question. So are we planning to do this air monitoring again with Verdanus for the November implosion?
We've discussed it. We have not made a determination yet if it's necessary because, quite frankly, the air monitoring, there was
Nothing.
nothing.
Mhm.
And we had samples from prior to the implosion, the day of the implosion, and after the implosion. So we had very, very nice sample set.
And then the only thing is this next implosion is bigger, correct? Because it's multiple buildings.
Mhm.
So I guess that's the only concern is if, I'm sure that's being taken into account, but
And I will work with the mayor and the administration.
Okay.
And if it's appropriate, we absolutely will do it again.
okay.
Has there been a date established yet?
No, there has not.
All right. Any other questions, comments, or remarks on the expenses? Hearing none, we'll close discussion. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
The motion is approved. Okay, next item is board member resignation. Mr. Monroe.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I indicated earlier in the meeting, I'm in receipt of a letter from Mr. Abram stating his intention to resign from the Avon Lake Board of Municipal Utilities effective December 31st of 2024. And procedurally, I do have a recommended motion for that.
Okay, and this is in the process of creating board succession. So thank you for your help with that, Mr. Abram. Any comments before we ask for a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I will abstain.
Mr.
I
Abram,
will abstain from voting.
that's a good idea. I mean, I think either way it works, but I would say. Pardon me?
Might vote no.
You never know. Okay, so may I have a motion, please, on this matter?
Sure. I move to accept the resignation of Anthony Abram from the Avon Lake Board of Municipal Utilities effective December 31st, 2024.
Thank you, Mr. Rush. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Ricky. Further discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
I abstain.
Again, thank you. Mr. Abram abstains. Let the record show.
Yes.
And again, thank you for the help with that. Project updates, Mr. Urinich.
All right. For the power plant update, really much of the same there. Still continuing with the cleanup from the last implosion. As Rob mentioned, they have not set a date officially for the next implosion. I keep touching base with Wayne Woodruff, and I'll let you know as soon as they do kind of zero in on a time frame for that.
And that should be the last implosion.
That's their initial plan. If they can do it all in one more implosion, that will be the final one.
Okay, thank you.
ETL Design Services, no updates at this time. For the water filtration plant improvements, we have our now standard picture show here. So this is the site of the chemical feed building. They made quite a bit of process. You can see the base, the big round circle there. It's the base for one of the alum tanks. They've also started with the rebar. You can see the vertical structures in the very center of the screen, and then off to the left, they've got rebar reaching up. That's gonna be the main pillars for the building. So with the height of those, you can start to get an idea of how tall this building is going to be. They've completed the south wall of the foundation, visible on the right-hand side of the screen. So they're just continuing to form the rebar, and as weather allows, continue to pour the foundation and the base for the bulk tanks and pumps and day tanks. Here, the other area of the plant that they've been working on, the filter expansion. So this is the 30-inch settled water line that fed the original 12 filters. There's a valve in a very easily accessible location that this gentleman was shutting. One of the things I noticed when this valve was shut, It was not 100% waterproof. So what they had to do in order to access the pipe outside, they shut the valve as much as it would hold, disconnected the bolts there, inserted what they refer to as a pancake, which is basically a rubber gasket into there to fully isolate that line for the time being. Out here is where they actually physically cut the 30-inch settled water line. Just below the cab of the excavator, you can see one part. They removed about a 20-foot section. And then where the gentleman right under the arm is standing, they're doing a camera inspection of the part that remained. As long as they didn't find anything showing any degradation of the pipe, that section of pipe will be reused when they connect the new filters. So they were able to perform that work during this past week. Next slide. And changing topics, this is the pavilion out back of this building that was recently constructed. We want to include a few pictures of that just to kind of show the area that the employees will have. That concludes the project updates, unless there are any questions.
Have none. Anyone?
Is there a table for the?
They have to stand. That's part of the new health program.
Standards,
Yes.
standards.
We're trying to save pennies, Mr. Abram.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Urinich. Any CUE report, Mr. Monroe?
A couple items to report on. I did attend two of the organizations that I am a board member on, the Association of Ohio Drinking Water Agencies. I attended that meeting. It was our fall meeting. We continue to move our group forward in regards to the legislative issues that are important to us and also our colleagues in Ohio, and we are making some good progress. We have a lot of cooperation, and we have a good group at Ohio EPA that has reached out to us for early stakeholder engagement on some of these topics. So we are thankful for that. I also, as the Water Utility Council for the Ohio AWWA, I'm the vice chair on that. We had our meeting, our quarterly meeting, and that was timely as it was the same day that the US EPA announced the new regulations regarding lead service lines. Mr. Urinich, Mr. Gibney, our engineering staff, Mr. Gadar and Mr. Larson, our distribution employees have been working diligently. We are required this month to submit our lead service inventory. But in a summary, the US EPA's new regulation is that they want all lead services removed within 10 years. So the first step, which we have been doing for a number of years, is identifying if we have lead services. We do have a lot of unknowns. So we're continuing to do our part. And if we come across them in project areas, we remove them. It is a standard line item in our bids for a contractor to so that the work can be done. And of course, if the service line from the meter to the house is the responsibility of the homeowner, property owner, we do make sure that we coordinate with them and guide them to ensure that they have the necessary tools to replace theirs. So those are the two main updates that I do have this evening.
Okay, a question on the lead service removals. How's that handled as far as lead being toxic waste?
If we do come across a lead service line, so I'll let Mr. Urinich speak in detail to it, but there's a couple of classifications of what constitutes a lead service line. It's not just lead pipe. There was a time that solder The solder had lead in it, so
Mhm.
lead joints. And there's been a lot of back and forth regarding galvanized pipe as well. If you want
That's the
to
zinc, I guess.
expand on that.
So if a lead service line is discovered, that is removed and disposed of, there's really no special disposal for it because it's not something that I guess is regulated that way. That can just be taken out of service and thrown out. If there is a galvanized line after a lead service, because one of the things that I guess what used to be a common practice before it was known, galvanized after lead can absorb and kind of get a coating of the lead. So if we were to come across that per the EPA requirements, that would have to be removed as well. It is basically in the same boat as lead in the EPA's books, galvanized requiring replacement. So that would be something that would have to be removed as well. As of today, we did submit our inventory. There are quite a few. I believe there was just under 2,000 that are unknown. While we don't believe those are likely lead, the EPA requires either installation inspection reports, being able to lay the eyes on it. They require a verification method that is approved by them. So those unknowns are the ones that we're going to be working towards, whether it's taking out the valve turner that has the small vector attachment, potholing over top of the service line on either point to physically verify it. And that way we can include that in our updated list as not being unknown. We will have verified that material. Coming up beginning of November, we're going to be sending out letters to any of those customers that have an unknown service line so that we can work with them to try to complete this process.
Okay, so back to the original question, there's no special handling of the material itself for disposal?
No, there's an actual SOP as to what a contractor will do if they come across those service lines, because there's things that we've got to follow before the line is disturbed. If you disturb a lead service, then we distribute filters to that entire area per the EPA regulations. If you remove it in a controlled manner, we limit that. We would still distribute if anybody was interested, but we go to that homeowner, we give them a filter as a precaution. But if we were able to remove the entire lead service, then they'll be able to start fresh with a copper or plastic.
And I know, Mr. Ricky, you have a question, but I want to pursue this a little bit more. So in terms of the paperwork, you said we do all these observations and samples and so on. Is there a specific EPA paperwork that we have to record and maintain the records of
They have
for this process?
a specific inventory form. The manner in which we keep those records, that's entirely up to us. And that was one of the things that was lacking. Homes from the 50s, 60s, 70s, we don't have as detailed of records as we keep today through our engineering and customer service. So that is an area that we're making sure that we have that documentation for everything moving forward.
Okay, and again, I want to pursue this a little bit more. Attorney Carr, I sense that there will be liability on us if something like, do the people that do this work understand that this isn't one for like, giving it a blessing, it's all fine, that you really have to make sure that the lead service is removed, because once we touch it, I believe it would become our liability for the lead
To the degree that
service.
you have knowledge, then you're going to be responsible or at least answerable to the regulators as to how you handled it from there.
Okay, so I
At a
would
minimum.
emphasize to the team, very important that we do this properly.
And if there's a
Mr.
contractor
Ricky.
performing work, we have our inspectors on site and they're very familiar with the requirements as well.
Okay.
I guess that brings me, I got kind of a two-tier question here. One was, I didn't bring it up, but our bundle project for this year, haven't heard much about that. And I know part of that is to replace water meters in a whole bunch of houses, like where I grew up, where the meters are inside. At that time, would you be doing tests like on a solder joint inside to see if it has lead in the solder, or what do you, I mean, are you gonna try to use this bundle project as a way to help identify some of these lines that we may have? I don't know, I'm just asking.
So we have part of our lead service inventory is we have a map of the city, of our distribution network. And as Mr. Yurnich stated, we have areas that we call unknown, because as of right now, we cannot verify what the service connection is. Those indoor meter locations, without looking at the map, they may not specifically be in those unknown areas.
Okay.
There, because you got to remember, if we have close to 10,000 service connections, we've got less than 2,000 that are unknown.
Gotcha.
So we have obviously any new home that's been built on Lake Road, if we can verify that, and it's defensible that we have the backup documentation of what's there, we can easily classify that now as it's no longer unknown.
Gotcha.
And that's how we start chipping away at it. We're not specifically testing like the solder joints, but those homes with the indoor meters. I mean, again, any of our project areas, whether it's an indoor meter or if it's just we're doing water line, if we come across lead service lines on the main, we address them, and we have done that.
We've actually got some lead service lines still.
The majority
out
of
there?
what we found were actually, they were just abandoned in place.
Oh.
They were still connected to the main, but they weren't connected. The house had a new service connection to the main that was copper, So in that case, though, we still follow the SOP and make sure that we're checking the boxes and documenting it accordingly.
Then that comes back to the other question. Where's that bundle package stand right now? We're getting to the end of the year here. Are we planning on still doing some of that this year? Or letting that contract?
Yeah, if anything, it may be ready to go out to bid this year, but there would be no construction this year.
Okay.
The goal was to have it done this fall, so that it would be ready to go out to bid, so that we could time things appropriately, that construction could start in the new year, that it would line up with when asphalt plants are open, and so we don't have to leave neighborhoods, unrepaired for over the winter months or anything like that. So
Okay.
they are moving along on that.
Okay, very good. And then,
Anything else, Mr. Rick?
yeah, just one last question. Did we find a lot of lead when we did the sewer separations? Did we run across lead lines
I
doing
believe
some of that work?
47 is the total number that have been found over the years.
How many?
47.
That's it?
Yeah.
Really? So it really wasn't, it's not as big a problem as it could have been, or probably in other cities.
Well, a city like Cleveland, they do have a lot of them.
Okay.
Obviously, a much larger distribution network, but a much older
System.
infrastructure.
Gotcha. Okay, very good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ricky. Anyone else? Mr. Monroe, while we're on the subject of tearing up the roads, I was up North Brunswick Road the other day. It comes between the West Winds and Lake Road. It's all torn up. It's not clear to me, but every 20 feet, it's torn up.
Oh, I know.
There seems, do you know what it is?
Yes, they're lowering gas lines. That is a project that's also going on in my neighborhood, not directly in front of my house, but on the other end of Greenpoint. The gas lines were not set low enough, which is kind of weird. I don't really understand it, but I know the city is doing road repairs or street repairs in those areas. And prior to the street repairs, they had to lower the gas lines, go in. So that's why you see cuts across the street.
It's
as they-
thoroughly.
Yeah, as they lowered the gas lines in those areas. We're not involved. I stopped actually and asked a couple people what was going on the crew there, because I thought maybe we had something to do with it. And it's all about gas lines being too high for whatever reason.
Is that related to people complaining about gas being, that they could smell gas everywhere last week?
It could possibly be because if they're doing work.
Sure,
like if
anytime
they're
they.
open a
make
gas
break
line
in
up,
the
you're
gas
gonna get
line.
the.
Yeah, I don't, it was
you're gonna
all
get the
over
smell.
social media last week, people could smell gas everywhere.
Yeah, that's probably part of it. They were, like I say, relocating gas lines. And of course, the gas line main runs on one side of the street. They have to cut underneath the street. And apparently there was an elevation issue there. So they are eliminating that first before they go back and do the road repairs on this year's projects.
Okay, thank you for informing me. You know, I know we're two guys that, like, we're always all around the city and wondering what's going on. Is anytime I see utility work, I'm wondering, is that our work? I didn't think this was, because I would have heard of it, but thank you, Mr. Ricky. Okay, next item is member reports miscellaneous. Any members with reports?
Not today.
Okay, I have no report. And let's see, then we have public speakers, Mr. Urinich.
No public comments.
Anything, Mr. Mondello?
Just a
Anything?
question on your lead investigation. You said there's maybe 2,000 at worst. What's the time frame of identifying those and repairing those? I think Rob said 10 years to get them out. I'm
10
sure
years is
your
when they
schedule is a little more aggressive than that.
want to get them fully removed. I believe it's a 3-year window to fully identify, to physically verify all of those unknowns. So we'll be working on that.
We intend to have it done before that.
Okay, anything else? All right, we have a request for an executive session to discuss the purchase and or sale of property. May I have a motion,
Yes,
Mr. Rush?
before making that motion, there may be board action following the executive
Correct.
session.
Yes.
Thank you. I move to meet in executive session as allowed by Ohio Revised Code Section 121.22 G2 to discuss the purchase and or sale of public property and to include the CUE, the CUO, and Attorney Connie Carr.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rush. Is that a second from Mr. Abram? Discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Mr. Ricky?
Yes.
Mrs. Schnabel?
Yes.
Mr. Abram?
I vote aye.
Mr. Rush?
Yes.
And chairman votes yes. We will not adjourn, but we'll go into executive session upon the clearance of the room. Thank you for your attendance, Mr. Mondello, and we will see you in